Welcome to My GRC POV, the podcast where we take an honest look at governance and compliance through a practical lens. I'm your host, Monica Reagor, and in today's episode, I am joined by an attorney, educator, and the founder of the National Association of Black Compliance and Risk Management Professionals, Jennifer Newton. We're going to take a good deep dive in the real world challenges of GRC. Her and I are going to talk about how to break barriers, build community, and most importantly, how new professionals can find their footing by just understanding the business behind the rules. So whether you're a seasoned compliance leader or just starting your journey, I think this conversation is packed with wisdom and you don't want to miss it. So let's get into it. Hey, Jennifer, I'm super excited to have you here on the very first episode of My GRC POV. Listen, so you already know that I actually host this as a newsletter on LinkedIn. And of course, you know what? Let's get some voices in the space. And let's have a genuine, honest, truthful conversation about GRC. And so I am super excited to have you on board today in this conversation about building community and the barriers that we've had to overcome as compliance risk managers. So you have had such an amazing journey in the compliance and risk management space. And so you started out as a federal regulator to now a CEO, an educator, and entrepreneur. So what actually drew you into the compliance and regulatory?
Monica, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can tell you that even though, I started this organization, which we'll talk about, I'm just super and always impressed with you. And so creating this space to have real talk about GRC is just another thing that I'm super excited for you about, because it's going to be amazing. And so thank you for providing me with an opportunity to grace your platform. I know it's going to be amazing. And for being the first one. Yay!
Yeah, I know, right? Like, it's one of those things, like, who do you have to come to be a part of the community? And then, you creating a space for us compliance professionals to get together and to have conversations. And I've met so many amazing individuals in this space and at the perfect time, right? Where compliance and regulatory work is super important. So yeah, I'm glad to have you a part of this. So yeah, tell us about you. How did you come on into the world of compliance and regulatory work?
So that's a great starting question, because sometimes I ask myself that every day, how did I get here? Because like maybe quite a few folks who are in this profession, I started out as an attorney. So I'm an attorney by trade. I went to law school and thinking at that point that I was going to do the whole trial lawyer thing. I saw myself as a litigator. I prepared myself as a litigator. I was in mock trial, moot court, national mock trial team. I was ready to come out guns blazing,
Yeah.
what are you going to do in court? And then I actually graduated around the time of the housing crisis, where there was a lot of financial turmoil. I'm probably sure you remember, it was
2008.
Everyone in foreclosure, houses, being sold. So it was a really, really difficult financial time. And because I had just graduated and I was on the market looking for opportunities, I also clerked for a judge, but that was for a year. I was looking for my first opportunity, my first role. And so I ended up being hired to work in consumer financial services, where I was representing homeowners who were in foreclosure. And I loved doing that. It was a perfect opportunity for me to develop litigation skills and to also have impact on a lot about consumer financial service issues. So protecting people from foreclosure means understanding the contracts, understanding consumer protection rights, understanding financial laws. And so that's really what got me exposed to that industry of consumer financial regulations. And from there, I ended up being really, 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 I would say, enmeshed in that industry, and that's what led me to actually work for a federal financial regulator, which was the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So, if you also remember at that time,
Yeah.
so as a response to the economic crisis that was happening then, a lot of the issues that were happening and that caused some of the depression that we were seeing and some of the defaults. The genesis of that was a lot of very shisty lending practices, unscrupulous mortgage lending, and just a whole host of things that needed to be revamped and revived. And so that led to the creation of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau under Dodd-Frank. And Dodd-Frank is a massive,
Yeah.
huge regulatory, I would say, achievement of Congress, because
Yeah.
for the first time, yeah, it's putting consumers first, right? And it's creating a regime and an agency that's going to focus on protecting consumers from financial abuse. And so yeah, so I did that. Um, and when one thing led to the other, so from working from a regulatory agency, it's what really got me exposure to regulatory expectations. And so I never knew anything about policies, procedures, any of the things that help organizations and entities manage regulatory requirements. I didn't care about those. I was protecting consumers.
Consumers. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but working at the agency, and especially as an enforcement attorney, part of your role is to uh, re- investigate and bring enforcement actions when there are violations of federal financial laws and regulations. And so, through those investigations, it involves understanding what the entity is doing, what the we call them as regular subjects, but
Right.
what they're doing, what their practices are, and that means understanding their policies, understanding their procedures, understanding what's happening in terms of the day to day, and then understanding what regulators expect certain things to look like. And so, getting that intel is what really, really made me marketable for organizations that were looking to understand the mind of a regulator. And so that led to me working in my first compliance role, where I really loved it. I loved it because it was like the perfect combination of legal doctrine and business, and
Yeah.
understanding the business. And that's what led me here. And ever since I gone down the compliance route, compliance actually opened up the door to my introduction to risk management, because
Yeah.
I didn't understand, even working as a understand how compliance fits into the whole um, risk management paradigm. And so working in compliance exposed me to that whole
Yeah.
whole area. And then from there I learned about corporate governance. And so then that's how we come full circle to what you call GRC, governance,
Yeah.
risk, and compliance.
And,
and
and
uh
that's where it
and
starts. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and one thing leads to the other. And that's how I got here. But a lot of that was just me being open to uh, opportunities, and not being pigeonholed into where I thought I should be because of maybe looking at prior people's stories.
Yeah.
I just kind of was open to the opportunity. One role led to another role, and if it fit where I was trying to go at that time, and also, my salary actually increased exponentially as I
Yeah.
learned new skill sets, and it made me more and more marketable. And so now, because I've jumped around to all of those different spaces, I feel really comfortable working in any setting, whether it's risk management, whether it's compliance, corporate compliance. I feel like all the pieces um, are are working together, and yeah, that's how I got here.
Yeah, you're so spot on when it talking about GRC. I started in compliance, then it led into you need risk, understand what you need to be compliant to, but you have to understand the risk. And
Mhm.
then you realize, well, in order for me to prevent all of that, I need to figure out what the oversight or the governance is. And so I think they all go hand in hand, right? It's literally you if you say I'm a compliance professional, it may be just that you're really really great at being able to articulate whatever that regulatory legislation is and communicating that into an action, but then you are also fully aware of trying to identify what are the potential risks, because even though you're following the compliance to that legislation is actually telling you here's the risk and this is what we're expecting from you. And so all of those three valuable roles actually come into one. So it's not just the compliance or the legal side or legislation side, but it is also the business side, because you are now the technician, if you will, to communicate that to the team or to the business needs, either internal or external stakeholder, and it transcends all across the board. One of the things I love about GRC is we get to marry the law, the legal interpretation to the business, and we actually
Yeah.
can match the value to our business partners, right? And our colleagues. And you have such a broad range, and from consumers to regulatory to, the federal side of it, to now you are bringing all of us together in this GRC space, right? And so let's talk a little bit more about that. What point it was a really a defining moment in your career, or just in life, or just in a moment in time that led you to start the National Association of Black Compliance and Risk Management Professionals, or for short for the rest of this episode, NABCRMP. So tell me what inspired you to do that?
So that's another question that I sometimes ask myself daily, when especially when I'm overwhelmed. So that's actually tied to my career trajectory, Monica, because so one of my roles um, was working as a consultant, and also I dibble dabbled back and forth too into like working at law firms. I worked at several large law firms, and so part of your role when you're a consultant or an attorney is to generate business, to go out there. They send you to conferences and they send you to local events to build relationships. And in the legal arena, there is what we call the National Bar Association for Black attorneys to network, and so a lot of professionals of color like myself usually start with affinity groups to
Yep.
start building relationships and networks, because for us that's the lowest hanging fruit, right? You sometimes can network and connect with people who you share common backgrounds with. Not to say that we're all alike, because we are certainly not all alike,
Right.
but it's usually a big starting place there. And so naturally, I gravitated towards affinity groups. And so when I was in the compliance world, I I was also tasked to do some of the same things, like build business development. And so went out there and I was like, okay, let me just go ahead and sign up. Where's the Black Compliance Association? And as I was Googling, I wasn't finding anything.
Yeah.
And so I actually did that like a year, and I thought, okay, maybe it's just my Google search terms, like I'm just,
Right.
deficient, there's just, it's because it has to exist, right? And so a couple of years later, I think I did the same thing, and I'm like, nothing's coming up, like,
Right.
there's nothing coming up. But at the same time, I'm going to many, many events, and I'm meeting and I'm connecting with folks like myself, folks of a variety of different backgrounds. So I know that there are a number of professionals, Black professionals in this space, and not only were they at conferences, but they were in my organization. So I
Right.
I know that that they exist, and especially going to a lot of those events. I was meeting folks and connecting with them, but sometimes it's hard to stay connected when you go back to your respective cities and you move on. You kind of lose connection, and so there was no way to kind of stay connected with all
Connected.
these
Yeah.
different folks you're meeting at events. And so I was talking to someone. I was like, you know what, it would be cool if there was an associate, a Black Compliance Association or something like that for Black professionals to just kind of to stay in touch. And that's how I saw it at first, just a way to stay in touch. And 19, I created a LinkedIn group just to kind of test the waters.
Sure.
And so the goal of the LinkedIn group was to facilitate those connections, so to facilitate networking, but to also share job leads, share resources, news, events, really to start building that community. And so when I set that up, folks started joining, which was, like surprising to me. I'm always surprised, like when you throw something out there
Right.
to the universe. So that's
I keep.
why
That's how I feel right now.
I'm always surprised. Like, some folks, they just, they take everything for granted. They're like, oh, of course, but never me. Everything is worth it. Every gain is something that I value. So, and if it's one, two people, it's
Yep.
a
It's a
success for
game,
me,
right?
and I
Absolutely.
celebrate it. Yeah, I don't take anything for granted. And so, folks started joining that, and so that was great to see, but still didn't really do anything with it.
Yeah.
It was just a place, I think, I was busy with things. And so in 2020, everything kind of fell apart
Or
again.
yeah.
But I think there's a pattern of, and now I'm thinking about of chaos
Well, we
that
kind of like we take chaos, right, and we find some form of order to it. I think that's what that is, right? I think a person who looks in compliance, we tend to walk into chaos, and we
yeah.
are forced to figure out what's the order of this thing, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, it seems to some sort of innovation in my life. It's always tied to some sort of chaos. But there was another chaos happening. That was COVID. COVID-19
Yeah.
happened, and that was funny because that was actually at a time in my life where I went back to law. So I went back to law.
Ah.
I started working at Greenberg Traurig, which is a very large law firm. They brought me there to build out the consumer financial team, and so that was huge. Still kind of in the regulatory space because it's not a litigation role; it's a role to advise financial institutions, depository banks, non-depository institutions on regulations. But it's still the practice of law, and so it's still writing those memos, and not really, having that hands-on contact that a compliance officer would with, folks in the business. And so I did that, but then at the same time, because we were all locked in our homes physically,
Yes.
and there's opportunity here to think about actually testing the waters, especially given that during that time, because of the passing or murder, I don't know how you call it, of George Floyd,
Right.
there was a lot of new efforts on focusing and centralizing the Black experience.
Yeah.
And as a result of what we saw in that period, a lot of organizations started making commitments to create spaces and to support the spaces that are being created for Black professionals, and realizing that their Black professionals are people both in and out of their organizations. And so responding to that, and I thought that would be a perfect opportunity to not only launch NABCRMP as organization that is providing professional development, but to also throw some resources around the concept of building the community. But what we did, I sought out a board, and that got some impetus. Shout out to uh, Corporate Compliance Insights,
Yep.
because they were amazing. They're the ones who got the word out. Also,
Yes.
Compliance Week. for also getting out the word of what the organization was doing, and just a lot of folks who were involved at the outset helped to build the organization
Yeah.
to what it is today. And since then, because it was put out there and folks saw the value in it, it's grown. And I give thanks not only to the folks that believed in it early, but the folks who've come along and have made it even more than what it is. It's an opportunity to cement a legacy, because
Yeah.
that's what it's about, right? It's
Yeah.
creating the space and the opportunities for those that come behind us, because NABCRMP didn't exist for us when we were just getting started. And
Yeah.
so uh, what we are going to leave behind is going to make it so much easier for those young professionals or seasoned professionals that are transitioning to
That's it.
easily connect with other individuals that are in the profession, to understand it a little bit more, because I still feel like a lot of folks don't know what a compliance officer does. They definitely don't know what corporate governance is. I was just talking to a faculty member at a university, and I was just asking, do the students even know what corporate governance is?
Governance is, yeah, absolutely.
And telling him that we probably need to, yeah, to sit back and unpack those things a little. But yeah, so it's just been the support, and I think part of the reason why the support has been there is because folks really understand the impact that an organization like NABCRM can have on future generations. And so, I'm super, super thankful and grateful for just the growth. And I sometimes I don't know how it's growing. I just have to thank God, because God opens up those opportunities. I think He brings
Yeah.
folks to the table that I think, you know, that I have no reason or rhyme to connect with,
Yeah.
but he's brought all those resources. And now in August we're celebrating our 5th year anniversary. So it's been 5 years. COVID happened in 2020, and now we're in 2025, and so to get here is just been incredible. We have about 500 members nationwide, and some of that is globally. We have members in outside of the country. We have almost 30 corporate members, and that includes organizations across all of the different various industries, the largest organizations. We also have cemented partnerships with federal government agencies. We've had our first annual summit conference in Atlanta. We've had several women organizations, several women conferences with Fordham University School of Law. So it's just been amazing, the growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that makes NABCRMP so unique is that, like you said, before 2019, my GRC POV started off as a newsletter. Now it's progressing into a podcast, and who knows where it's going to go. And the whole premise of this is to make connections, right? And prior to 2020, most of the individuals in compliance or in risk management have a law degree or a law background. So they're typically attorneys, lawyers. Now, literally in the last 5 years, skill focused or technically focused, right? So like mine, even though I have transportation background and compliance, which is like Title VII and grants and all that, I have a working background in technology, IT. So it was very easy for me to transition from transit to cybersecurity because I already had an IT background, even though I don't have a degree in compliance, right? It's my working career. And so I got certified in compliance. So now I can partner and pair my technology, my working experience to compliance or risk management. And I think that's what's happening. I think that's the growth pattern, right? Like people are looking to transition from being a elementary school teacher to compliance or SOC 2, from working as a operation manager to frontline risk management or operations. And then it's like those skills are transferable. And then the compliance role has now, well, for cybersecurity, it's two there's two pathways. There's the technical side, which is all of the coding stuff, but then now there's the actual compliance and risk management side, which is the policy management, the organization, bringing order to the chaos. What I think what you've done with NABCRMP is given a space for every industry, from healthcare to retail to e-commerce to telecommunications, and then bringing these experts in this space to say, one, you're not alone, and two, you and I, who often don't occupy this space, this particular career path, we're like 0.26% or something like that in the compliance space. Is we're now connecting resources. If there's an opportunity like this, I'm like, okay, these are the people I wanted to bring on to highlight them. What you've done with NABCRMP is not just created a safe space for professionals like you and I to grow, but for minorities and those who are looking for more information. But you've created a movement. Because, shout out just for a second, there's several members from NABCRMP that are part of the Compliance Week Women in Compliance Summit that's taking place in Austin, Texas. So pat yourself on the back, because many of us would have not connected with each other without connecting through NABCRMP. So it's worth the opportunity to be a part of a community that we truly speak about. There's an opportunity for you to shine in the room, especially in your expertise. And there's also, even though you may be part of the healthcare field, but you also create a space for somebody to jump into privacy and data security, or I want to know more about e-commerce. So I think kudos to you.
No, when I see that, when I see members and folks speaking at other conferences, I'm always super happy for them, because one of the main reasons why I created this space is because I already knew that the talent existed. I already knew that, because like I was telling you, they may not be on those panels, right? But I'm connecting with them in the hallway, at dinner, at networking events. And so I knew they were there. And so what NABCRMP has done is provided a vehicle to be seen. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. I don't necessarily care to see folks just speaking at our events, or
Right.
just at our conferences. The goal is to be seen,
Yeah.
by whomever that can actually open doors to elevate you, because that's what it's about sometimes, is being seen and being recognized and being valued. And so a lot of folks haven't been provided that exposure. And then sometimes the industry has had a difficulty identifying diverse talent, because I've met a lot of organizations. I've talked with a lot of folks that lead conferences. They want to see diverse panels. They want to diversify the panels. The problem is they didn't have a way to identify where those individuals were. So NABCRMP is the vehicle to create those optics for individuals who are not typically seen, and to provide them with those opportunities. And so when you see folks at Compliance Week, at ABA events, that's exactly what we intended to happen. We don't want to see the same diverse professional at all of the events and overworking that person, because that's what ends up happening. Like, for example, a lot of folks, they always ask me, like, are you, you should do that. You should speak. I turn down speaking engagements because yes, it is an opportunity, but it's work. Monica,
Yep.
it's a lot of work. You got to prep for conferences, you got to prep for panels. And so I
Everybody has a
no longer,
special need.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
no longer in the zone where I care about those things. Like, the goal is to for someone else to kind of fit into that space. One single individual shouldn't be working so hard to be the only diverse voice. There are many other talented, really, really great professionals in the field, and that's what I wanted the organization to showcase, because there shouldn't be a struggle to diversify panels. There are a plethora of talented professionals in every sector and from every segment, every industry. And so that's what I wanted NABCRMP to provide is optics for those who can contribute to shaping various industries, and that's what we're doing. So we have
Almost, I
across
should say,
industry
mission accomplished because you're doing it. Let me tell you, five
kind of
years later. Yeah.
I would, and part of the other dilemma too, Monica, is that we don't know what we don't know. And so even though we have about, I would say 500 now, I don't know how much we've tapped of what the current pool is, right?
Yeah.
Because we're the only organization that has existed, we don't know if currently how many in the country, how many how many professionals in the country are Black professionals that work in GRC, and how many have we tapped? So not knowing the what the unknown is challenging, because that would help us understand how much more work we have to do to bring folks into our network. But even if they don't join as members, I think just the idea of NABCRMP and what it's the message that it's providing is that there are diverse professionals in this space is enough, because it helps the industry connect with folks who could lead them to other folks outside of the membership.
Absolutely.
And so even that's just a success.
It also highlights the level of excellence that comes from a diverse group, right?
Mhm.
Oftentimes, just in this particular climate, it is, if you look at diversity, then you're lowering the standards. But if you really take a look at what NAPCRMP has delivered as panelists and speakers and conferences, and the individuals that are in this space that are leading, driving, and shaping and protecting their organizations, we are no pushovers, right? There's no one's lowering the bar, everyone's raising the bar, and either we have to meet it or exceed it, and we know that. And so, just in the GRC space, we understand that as a community, we can't miss. So we have to build community and network so that we can use each other as a resource. And that's just
Mhm.
how people of diverse backgrounds or diversified backgrounds really work. That's how we've survived for over 200 years in this country, is connecting and building community. And I think that is an example of how amazing NAPCRMP has done. So you have taken an idea and said, here is a gap in our profession, in our industry. Surely there's has to be something out here for the African American or Black community or minority community in compliance, because there's everything else, right? There's chefs, there's retail, there's e-commerce. Surely there's compliance, right?
Nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, right. And then you like, well, let me test the waters, let me see. And then, now you're like, you know what, this might be the time. Again, paying attention to those small nuances and moments in time and seasons, right? And then taking a leap of faith and creating something amazing. And then again, the right people in the right place. Like Compliance Week has been a huge supporter of NAPCRMP, and then Compliance Line, I think it was when I came aboard. There was the few
Yeah,
things.
compliance.
Yeah.
There's many
um
many partners to
yeah.
thank. I mean, this wasn't done in a vacuum.
Yeah.
We've been blessed to have industry partners who have been in the game for a long time embrace NAPCRMP. There's just an amazing list of folks that we'll definitely remember the summit event. We should probably invite them as well. But just
Absolutely.
many folks that helped to bring it to fruition and saw the value
Yeah.
in it. That's what always amazes me is that folks see the value, and then the trust too, because that's everything to me. Because it's one thing to say, yeah, I agree, and then you never hear from folks again.
Yep.
But it's been great to have folks actually trust the process, and to show up. And our first annual summit was evidence of that. and
Yep. It was
and
virtual.
and folks, yeah, like just following this crazy person who says it's going to be annual summit in Atlanta, who's never done this before.
Right.
So I'm just going to get on a plane and travel to Atlanta, Georgia. So I was praying for things not to go wrong when you have managing directors and things
Yep.
like that, flying. But everything went well, and it reiterates the point that the space is not only necessary, but it's valued. And so, that was just amazing to see.
Yeah. So let's talk more about the GRC space. Like, what advice would you give a person who's considering or thinking about the GRC field, who wants to make a difference, but really don't know where to start, right? Of course, we're going to say find your community. And of course, NABCRMP is that. But from your own personal wisdom, like, where should a person start who's like, I know I can make a difference in a space where I wouldn't say order to chaos, but who have a appreciation and a knack. I think a grind, because being in this field, you have to have some grit to be successful. And where do they start?
Yeah, that's an interesting, good question because the start point is what needs to be demystified because
Yeah.
to put a definition on the starting point in a GRC career. My starting point has been completely different than others, but one of the things that I think has impressed me and did impress me when I first started my first compliance role was the way that compliance professionals understand the business. And so you have to understand when I got my first role in compliance, I was just hot off the legal track.
Yep.
I just was a DC attorney, came with my legal prowess
Girl, were
and
you all,
was
Olivia
humbled.
Pope at some point? You were try.
But I was humbled really quickly because when you work in a compliance realm, they don't need your memos. Like they don't need
Mm.
your long, lengthy, and I still struggle with that, hence the name National Association of Black Compliance Risk Managers. But they don't need anything lengthy. They need it cut and to the point, and they need to be able to understand it. Like to explain things to them so that they can take the information and build around it. So build a program or a process to comply with it, and they need answers very quickly. So we don't have time to write a memo. And so I learned that that's not intuitive for a lot of attorneys. And so when you hear that whole debate about, do you need to be a lawyer to be in compliance? Even though this is coming from a lawyer, I say you do not have to have a JD. You don't need a law degree to work in this field, but you do have to have a process building mindset, a process improvement mindset. You got to know how to build things and also how to critique things, right? And that comes from a detailed oriented inclination. And so if you have those skill sets, you're going to be able to dissect things. You're going to be able to question things and think critically about processes and functions and be able to connect pieces. And so, fortunately, I think because of some uh, OCD things that I think that kind of fit into my personality, I was able to adapt and learn quickly. But just having the understanding and the legal knowledge and knowledge of regulatory schemes and regulations and statutes is not enough in this field. You have to understand the business and you have to be willing to be a partner with the business. And so that's what I learned immediately. And I was just so impressed by the compliance professionals that I met in my first job because they were not only very knowledgeable of regulatory requirements as they pertain to our organization, but they understood the processes around
Yeah.
the structuring of how you bring about compliance in an organization. And I learned quickly that that's what made you valuable in that environment is your ability to talk shop with the business, to understand their headaches, and to be able to explain to them and to help them achieve a state of compliance as a learning point for me, to don't be, don't just be a lawyer. They don't need a lawyer. There's a team for that.
There's plenty of
There's a legal there's plenty of folks that can do that, and that can provide legal guidance, and that was part of the struggle too, that I think some folks had with some folks who were lawyers. They didn't want to do the business stuff. They didn't want to learn the business, and that doesn't bring you far in the compliance world. And so when I talk to folks, and even when I talk to my students, I tell them, if you really want to be impactful in a compliance role, learn the business. So if you don't have any compliance experience and you want to move into compliance, whatever industry you're in, learn it. Learn the
business.
industry, and that's what's going to really, really help, because there's a role for you. I think like that, like what you were mentioning earlier. So compliance is made up of operations too. So
Yeah.
so if you are good with developing processes, and you've played a role in your organization, you might be a good fit for a compliance role that pertains to building out programs and functions that's operational. And so as long as you have some pertinent industry knowledge, you're marketable for a compliance role in that industry. And so that's
Absolutely.
why I say learn an industry, because that's what's going to really, really make you marketable, whether it's risk management, whether it's corporate governance, whether it's compliance. You got to know what folks are talking about, and so that means learn the industry. And our healthcare compliance group, they put on a webinar, and that's essentially what they were saying in terms of getting your foot started in a career of healthcare compliance. Start somewhere, whether you're on the provider side, whether you're just working as a
That's
nurse,
good.
or you're still learning aspects of the healthcare industry. Whether you're on the insurance side, you're doing billing, you're learning requirements
Absolutely.
around billing and rules and regulations. And so that can lead to a role in compliance, over operation.
Yeah, I think but and to your point, I think the evolution we're starting to see is not only learning the business, right? We're also evolving to cultural intelligence, because you in order to become compliant, and more compliant regulations are being introduced, they're looking at how are you operating, and in order to shift a organization, a team, a department, or just rebranding, you have to dive into cultural intelligence. How do people think? So now you have to talk about getting people's buy-in. So your ability to communicate a really legislative or dense language into something very simple that is actually actionable, that's going to give actual results. And so, to your point, when you're an operational person or you're a process management person, there is space for you in compliance. And if you are a person who can identify a risk and you like putting that puzzle together and saying, okay, but here's how we mitigate this risk, having the strategies to prevent something, risk management may be your field. Or if you're a person who understands, I can give oversight. What does that oversight look like? Governance look like? That's an opportunity there. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're in compliance or risk, you got some form of governance, because somebody has to check you. And so you're spot on when you say, you start somewhere. And honestly, there's no magic starting point. Like, I know for attorneys or for doctors, we know you start in college, medical school, right? There's a pathway to that. If you're going to go to become an attorney, starting pre-law, or there's a pathway to that. But GRC will bring you in and take those transferable skills. And then the other part of it is, if you're not only domestic, but they're also global. So now you're not just dealing with U.S. legislation or compliance rules or regulations, but you're also dealing with international, and that's a whole nother ball game. And then you have to be able to, again, build strategies around that. How do we become compliant? How do we remain compliant? and then build those actual items so that you're driving results. Because for the compliance space, we may not see dollars and cents immediately for sales, but we are definitely the people that make sure we stay out of giving away dollars and cents.
Compliance, a lot of folks would be in trouble.
But we've had that happen before. So we had the Enron issue because of compliance, right? And then we had the housing market. Then essentially 2020 with COVID, everything went to cybersecurity, and cybersecurity has literally exploded. There's so many facets and fields and pathways into cybersecurity. So no, you don't have to know computers or program, but if you can research, read, and write policies and speak well and get people together into actionable items and to get tasks done, perfect field to be in.
You have I would say a sense of conviction, but you have a ethical background.
Passion.
So yes, you have a passion for ethics and for doing the right thing. That also takes you a lot further. They folks with that ethics tend to be, you know, I don't say the queen or kings of no, but they are
Yeah.
very, very good compliance officers because although there's a lot of pressure, right? Because the business and everyone wants to make money, and they need things,
Done fast and
yesterday,
quick.
not
Yep.
today or tomorrow, but yesterday. You have to be centered on something,
Yeah.
like that doing the right thing. And so, if that's what drives you, I think that's a perfect framework for a career in GRC because there's many pressures and opportunities to be compromised. And so, if you are a person that can withstand all of that, that's a great foundation for a career in GRC.
Absolutely. You have to have a strong moral ethic root in you, because they're going to challenge it. That dollar sign is important to all of us, but we take pride in making sure that we are able to gain or obtain that dollar the right way. So yeah, I that's spot on. I absolutely agree with that. So I know we're gonna getting close to wrapping up, but I wanted to ask you this last question, and that is this: how do you balance your professional demands with such an active community involvement that you do so much? You're a professor, you're the CEO and founder of NABCRMP, and you're an entrepreneur. You have your own business. How do you do it all?
That's also a question. That's also a question that I ask myself and I ask God. Like how could I do? I talk to God the way I talk to a friend.
Yep.
Sometimes I feel like I can't do it all. And to answer your question, Monica, that's exactly the answer. I don't try to do it all.
At all.
I
Yep.
try to do the best that I can and that I have. And when I feel like I'm at my breaking point or my capacity, that's where I call on a higher power to help come in with some resources. And I'll say that he's never failed.
Yeah.
So it's through faith and just a belief in good people and sowing good seeds.
Yep.
So I believe that you build relationships before you need them. So having solid, good relationships with people, sowing good deeds reaps good harvest. And so I've seen that replay in my life. And so I try to replicate that. And because of that, things tend to work themselves out. And so whether it's professional life, whether it's personal life, that's the mantra that I try to live by. So I do the best that I can. That if you sow good things, they come back in return. And so that's why I'm very picky about the things that I do because everything takes time and takes bandwidth. So I'm trying to do things that perfectly align with the skill sets and the resources and the talents and the passion that I was born with.
Yeah.
If it doesn't align with that, then it's going to be a lot of work for me to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think one of the things that, oftentimes people say, when I say it to myself too, I'm like, there's so much going on. And then We don't have to do it all at once. We can do them in season, right? We can work it out,
Yes.
flush it out in season. So to anyone that's listening to this podcast and you're trying to figure out what is my next, make sure you know that you don't have to do it all at once. Do it in parts and in season. But make sure, like Jennifer said, that it aligns with your beliefs and values, because even though as exciting as all of it is, and but it's a lot of hard work, and it's your passion that carries you through those moments where it just doesn't make sense and you're questioning your own sanity. Because I know I do some days. I am totally excited. I'm super excited about this journey, but I gotta know, what is a compliance myth that you wish would go away?
Ooh, compliance myth that I think one of the compliance myths that, and hopefully it's not a myth anymore, that we don't trust them, that we don't trust the
Yeah,
business.
yeah, I got you.
What you mentioned earlier, compliance officers want you to succeed. They want the business to succeed. That's how we get paid. It's
Absolutely.
through thriving, right? But the other piece of that is, there are some real consequences
Yep, yep.
to non-compliance. And what happens when there is an issue? Who does the organization blame? Compliance,
Yep.
right? I mentioned a lot of things that I learned early on, working as a compliance officer. But one of the other aspects of this learning curve that I was exposed to was that there's a tremendous amount of pressure to get it right. Right? There's a
Can't
lot of
miss.
pressure. You,
We can't miss. I tell my company that my teams that every day. We can't miss. So you better triple check. Can't miss. And to your
yeah,
point, like if we do, it's not just the company that suffers the consequence. It is you as the compliance agent.
absolutely.
Yeah, and that follows you. That it's a
Right.
one and done, because we live on our
Yeah.
word is supposed to be rooted in moral ethic, good faith effort.
So if it seems like compliance officers are stymieing, an effort, or that there's a lack of trust, like there's so much at stake.
Yeah.
And especially in this day and age where there's global regulation and things are changing every day, and
Goodness, yeah.
trying to keep track of everything. And so we have to be gatekeepers of compliance, of regulations, requirements, all those things. And so I see it as not a distrust, but let me take extra caution because I care that much, right? So it's the compliance officers that approve things. As soon as you give them that, you need to be wary about. That's what you should be worried about, but not the conscientious compliance officer or risk management professional that is taking some time with certain things. It's because they want to get this right. They don't want to see the organization on the Channel 7 news.
Yeah, I totally agree. Tell your people. We're not coming after you because we have nothing else better to do. We don't want to see you fail. We actually want to see you win, because a win-win for us, win for you is a win for us, okay? And it's a win for the business. So, absolutely. So, Jennifer, listen, thank you so much for joining us again, and I'm super excited to have you. And listen, so if you guys are looking to, connect with Jennifer, make sure you go and check out her LinkedIn, and as well as make sure you check out NABCRMP.org. That's NABCRMP, and connect, right? This is a space where people who are experts in their field are not only connecting with other experts in their industry, but they also are cross training themselves. So this is how we succeed in this space. Congratulations to 5 years to the National Association of Black Compliance and Risk Managers. Managed professionals. Looking forward to the summit that's taking place in New Orleans at the end of August. So make sure, if you haven't already signed up, make sure you register for the conference. I will be there. Jennifer will be there, and we're going to have some great workshops, and we have great speakers. But most of all, there's going to be some amazing people to connect with, so we can continue to build a community that is about truth, honesty, and strategy. So until next time, thank you guys so much. Man, did you enjoy that interview as much as I did? I absolutely love it. Jennifer and I can talk about GRC for hours because we are so passionate about the space. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode, My GRC POV, with the incredible Jennifer Newton. I am so glad she was able to leave us with something that basically just reminded us that government risk and compliance is more than policy. It's about people, it's about purpose, and it's about progress. And so if you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not already. But if you really want to get into depths of conversations, I hope you will join my Substack so we can keep the conversation going. And until next time, I'm Monica Reagor, and this is my GRC POV.